Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgianna.
Today, we are going to be talking about napping, a delightful
Napping.
topic. Now,
Depending
before
on
we...
where you are in life in your relationship with napping.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I was anti-napper, and now I guess I'm pro-napper.
I was an anti-napper too.
Something like that, yeah. Okay, but before we get into this lovely conversation about naps, we are going to take a moment to connect with ourselves, and then we'll connect with each other and this podcast. So G has a practice ready.
So I'm noticing myself just starting to, I'm sitting and I'm just starting to place a different amount of pressure on different spots of my butt on the seat and just really looking for where that sweet spot is, where it feels good to rest, where it feels good to let my body be supported by the surface. So the invitation to do the same. And noticing what happens with your breath when you do that. You could be doing that as you're standing as well. I don't think we give that much intention and awareness to how we're standing and if it feels good. So this is time to practice that. And then we're going to bring a really small movements to our upper body. So we're just going to start with letting your shoulders be how they are when you're sort of not paying much attention. And we're just dropping the chin. So my shoulders are naturally a little rounded forward. My chin is dropped. And I notice my gaze is sort of down in front of me on the floor. And just being here for a breath. Could be here for 2 more breaths. And then we're going to bring a very slight shift to things, which is to lift your chin just a touch. And that's going to bring your gaze to maybe just above horizon level. And just pulling the shoulders. It's not a cranking the shoulders back, but just a tiny opening up of the shoulders. So probably a smaller movement than you would do if you were thinking of like moving your shoulders. We're really looking for a micro movement here. And just noticing how that feels and seeing if you feel the difference between dropping the chin and rounding the shoulders. So we can go back to that first position where shoulders might be a bit more rounded forward, chin is dropped. You can have your eyes open or closed. And the invitation now is just to move between these two very, very like subtle different postures. Going back and forth and noticing how they feel. And noticing how you feel in each position, if it's the same or different. Bless you.
Excuse me.
And if you've done them eyes closed, I'd encourage you to practice them eyes open. Most of the time in our life, we're walking around the world with our eyes open. This is a great practice throughout your everyday life. So we want to give you the opportunity to practice with your eyes open. So what is it like to drop the head around the shoulders a little bit? And then what do you notice when you lift your chin, raise your gaze, pull the shoulders back just a slight touch?
It's reminding me of when someone enters a room with a hunch, how it makes me immediately want to bring my shoulders back and lift my head up. Such good reminders.
What did you notice, Steph? What's the difference for you, if you noticed any, from dropping your chin and your gaze and rounding the shoulders a bit forward versus just a slight lifting of the chin, your gaze, and opening of the shoulders?
Well, I notice I really tend to have my eyes closed. It's a really inward feeling, especially with the rounded, like I'm noticing
Mm-hmm.
the position of my hands and the closedness feeling of my body, like a protective
Mm-hmm.
self feeling. And then when I move the shoulders back a little bit, well, first I noticed that it's very difficult for me to move my shoulders back only a tiny bit. I
Mm,
really want to crank them all the way back and
right.
arch my back and throw my head all the way back. It's an opening. And I noticed that the slouchy, closed eye feeling feels better to me right now.
And that's what we want to practice, is noticing what feels better right now, and also noticing between those two, where do I spend most of my time? And does it feel off balance? What would it be
Mm.
like for me if I spent a little bit more time in the other posture?
Mm.
And I think it's in our body based toolkit in priming the body for peace, where I think I did an exercise in there that sort of speaks to what you said. Like sometimes it feels good to go internal and to close off from the world a little bit. And that's really important. And I don't think I knew how to do that before in my life. I was just out in the world, go, go, go all the time. And then sometimes it's necessary in life and in relationships to open up and allow yourself to be seen and to receive and to take action and move forward. And just the slight movement today mimics the symbolization of that a bit. But it's really neat to notice, where do you spend most of your time? Like really open and out in the world and engaging and doing and in action. How much time do you spend in rest and introspection?
Mm.
And where might it be off balance?
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like a very inward time in my life right now. So it makes sense that this
Mm-hmm.
inward feeling feels comfortable and true right now.
Mm-hmm. Um, I specifically really liked this and noticed a huge shift in practicing this, because as a little girl, I watched my mom, and I remember saying this to my mom often as a kid, as a teen, as an adult. And I never really understood why. I don't think I ever really got an answer. But I saw my mom walking out in the world just down the street, often with her head down, looking at the ground. And I remember asking her, like, what are you looking at? What would it be like to lift your chin and look up and see what's around? And I noticed that I don't know, just by watching her taking over that a little bit, or just also without too much intention, sort of autopilot, did a lot of walking, maybe not with my head down as much as she had her head down, but I definitely noticed I was off balance. I didn't really walk down the street with my shoulders and heart open and my chin lifted and my gaze up.
Mm.
And I thought, what would it be like in my life? How would it impact my life if I just practiced that a little bit more? So I'd practice that on like short things, like, oh, from here to the stop sign, from here to my car, from my car to the shop. I'm just going to walk and I'm going to notice my initial posture. If I bring no awareness to it, and then I'm just going to tweak it a tiny bit. I'm just going to pull the shoulders back a tiny touch. I'm going to lift the chin just a bit, and I'm going to lift my eyes and my gaze. And I wanted to notice how that felt and what difference, if any, it would bring. And I noticed I was more alert. I was more engaged. I was more connected. I felt happier. I was
Mm-hmm.
able, like, the world felt more vibrant to me. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, wow, all of this in tweaking a few tiny things. And I
Totally.
completely changed how I felt walking out in the world.
Yeah. I remember practicing this in downtown Vancouver and feeling like I've like never really looked at the city, apparently, like looking up while walking through the city I've lived in my entire life. I felt like a tourist, everything felt, it's exactly right, vibrant and new, and it's totally
Mhm.
different experience.
Mhm. I find it's very much easier for me to be lost in my own thoughts and rumination. Like my own thoughts, when I say lost in my own thoughts, they were typically never thoughts that made me feel vibrant about life. They were like, what do I need to do later? And have I taken care of this? And what about this? Like, they were either some list of to dos, some list of I should have's, or like, oh my gosh, when am I going to deal with that? And those thoughts paired with that posture of rounded shoulder, dropped chin.
Yeah.
And as I lifted my chin and pulled my shoulders back a touch and really engaged with my eyes, there's so much other sensory information to take in that
Hmm.
it only leaves a certain amount of room for all that rumination and all those thoughts. So
Hmm.
it's the magic of how you can shift your nervous system state with a tiny, what they call like a micro movement, tiny change in
Totally.
posture.
And
Mhm.
your frequency, right? Like what you're open to. When we're walking around in that slumped inward posture, we're not open to much. And sensory data, energetic data, availability for connection, all of that gets shut down or made really specific. And there's a whole world of other options out there if we're open to it.
And we give off a certain energy, right? We're all like, as we all pass each other on the street, we're giving off a certain energy. I remember I used to take this commuter train, the West Coast Express, because I used to work in corporate and took that train every day. And you're with everybody else that's like going from the suburbs down into downtown Vancouver, going into one of those big, towers and working behind a desk all day long. And then years later, I had gotten out of that industry and, gotten into this work. And I had a very different schedule, very different life. And one day I needed to take that train into the city, not for work, but I just had to go there for something. I can't remember what. And I looked at the people. They all looked so miserable. And it was all like head down, energy closed, just trotting along. And you could feel the energy at that station. And you could feel
Hmm.
the energy as people are going up the escalator, going about their day. And I was like, wow, like I lived in this for a long time, this energy. And
Yeah.
I felt a little sad. I felt a little
Mm-hmm.
sad that that was the energy that I was assuming that 5 days a week, every single week,
Yeah.
these people live in this energy every morning.
We're immersed in it. So this is making me think of honeymoon phases in relationship, and like you can create this in your life just by looking up. I remember once downtown on a bus, we were all on the bus in that exact way you're describing, slumped over, work a day kind of vibe. And this tourist got on the bus and she stopped at the front and she looked at all of us and she actually exclaimed, "What is the matter with you people? Look at this beautiful city. Look at those beautiful mountains. It's like you don't even see it." And I thought, well, you're a tourist, of course you're seeing it. When I go to a city that is unfamiliar, I'm looking at it completely. I'm taking in all of this sensory data the same way you do in a honeymoon phase in relationship. And then we
Yeah.
slowly close in on ourselves and our old patterns and our day-to-day blah, blah, blah. And it really can just be as simple as looking up, opening your eyes, opening yourself.
It makes a huge difference. That's why we had practices like this in the body-based toolkit. Like, can you feel your butt and can you look for circles?
Hmm.
Can you feel your hands on the steering wheel and look for rectangles?
Yeah.
Because you practice looking for the new in the familiar. Like that's what that
Mhm.
lady was saying on the bus. Like, can you not see what's beautiful here, what's new here to you in what's familiar? Like, yes, you see the mountains every day and you're thinking, oh, that's just because you're new, lady. And when I'm new somewhere, I look too. But why can't we be new every day?
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
Why can't we be looking for what's new and special every day, even, amidst what's familiar? And that's been something that's really changed how I feel every day, being
Mm.
able to look for what's new in the familiar. I'm
Mhm.
someone who wants novelty all the time, and there's a great side to that. And I'm also at high risk of being bored and depressed.
Yeah.
So I challenge myself to look for what is new in the familiar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wanted to say this thing about looking up. So you were just saying, hey, what a difference it makes to our day, to how we feel if we just look up. I remember when I was in a relationship with this person, and we were just having some conflict. And he had said something that must have triggered up something in me, that all of a sudden I started feeling all sorts of intense emotions. And I could feel and notice my brain going to, you're such a jerk. Here we go again. Like, I thought we talked about this already. All that stuff that goes really fast when someone has, said something that triggers up old stuff. And I was actively working with this practice at the time of shifting micro movements, lifting, noticing where my posture was, and then making tiny changes to see what would be different. And I noticed in that moment, when I was like thinking all these horrible things about him and our relationship and wanting to just lash out and say mean things, I noticed, oh, my head is down right now. I'm not looking at him. And I thought to myself, okay, let's practice. Let's just see. Like, I'm still fuming mad, but I had enough, access to my higher thinking brain that said, let's just raise, like, open up the shoulders and lift the chin and like look what would happen. And like, as soon as I looked up, there was more sensory information. So I wasn't stuck in my same mental loops. And I said, okay, let's shift again. What if I look at him? And when I looked at him, I saw a person.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, I see you. I see you're flustered right now. I see you as a person. And when I see you as a person, it's much harder for me to sit here and want to lash out at you because I'm feeling me, and I'm feeling my overwhelm and upset, but I'm also seeing you as a human being. And I
Mm.
think if we look back at times when we've lashed out on people we care about and we love, and I'm not talking about someone you feel unsafe with, but like, when we've done that, I think it's typically when we're not seeing the human in front of us. It's
Yeah.
really hard if you're like a generally kind-hearted, reasonable person, regulated person. It's hard for you to look at another human being and be like, let me just say the meanest stuff to you right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good.
No.
But the way it's easier to say that is if you're not actually connected to that person. And one way of connection is really seeing someone, looking at their eyes. Another thing I've practiced over the years is, can I see the innocence in someone's face? And I practice doing that for these kinds of situations, because even though I might be upset or hurt, like, it's still a person. It's still a person I care about. If
Mm-hmm.
I have lost the ability to see the innocence and the humanness in them, then that's when I can pull out shame, blame, criticism, stonewalling, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't do anything good for our relationship.
Yeah. And we're also immersed in that right now. Social media, emails, so many of the people we're having to communicate with are not in front of us. And it's just prime opportunity for us to be trapped in our own stories and projecting ideas and forgetting the humanity of the person on the other side of the screen who, may or may not be there. A lot of the work that we do when we talk about relationships and clearing energy that we might have for another person, learning how to have difficult conversations with the other person, we recommend having a photo of them so that you can interface with them and work through some of that stuff on our own with them in front of us and seeing their humanity through the photograph. I think it's so important that we remember that we are all people and we are all doing our best.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, back to that living room. I think it was a dining room experience. I noticed when I looked up at him, that intense need to like fire and attack shifted. I was still
Mm-hmm.
frustrated and hurt, but I was like, there's a different way to handle this situation right now.
Yeah.
And it all came from the willingness to like look up, because I know for a fact if I would have stayed sort of looking down or looking away, my mind would have kept going in that negative loop, and I probably would have gone on attack and said a whole bunch of things that were not kind and not helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. This, standing up straight, putting your shoulders back is step one in a number of personal growth enterprises I've encountered in life. It really is a fundamental key. It's something you can do yourself. It's free, it's easy, and it has such an immediate effect on your own experience and your interactions with other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like this was a topic unto itself.
I
I
agree.
don't see how naps follow from this.
This is also following the impulse of life.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I think, well, here's what I think. Tell me what you think. I think you should walk us through another simple practice of observing,
Mm,
and I think we should talk about naps next time.
I agree.
Yeah,
I was going to say the same thing. Yes.
great. Okay.
Um, well, since we talked about looking for what is the new and the familiar, that seems fitting to practice.
I love this one.
Yeah. So finding your anchoring point, which could be your feet touching the ground or your butt on the seat or your back on the bed, whatever it is, and having a moment to be there, spending a full inhale and exhale, feeling that body connection. And I like looking for shapes in this practice in the beginning because it helps it be a little bit more structured. And once you get better at looking for shapes, you can look for newness in the familiar in a bit of a different way. But let's go for, okay, actually, I'll let you choose. You choose a shape, and then I'll walk us through it.
Well, I'm partial to rectangles.
Okay. So Stephanie has given us the task of looking for rectangles, and I'm going to add in choose a rectangle or like look for a rectangle that you don't typically see, right? It's been there the whole time, but you never really look at it. So, and I find that so fun. I find it's like a scavenger hunt. Every time I find something new, I'm like, hey, I found something new. So, I'm going to share with you the new thing I found, which is I'm feeling my butt on the seat. And the rectangle that I see is on my balcony that I can see out the window. And it's the space in between the glass pane and the pillar.
Mm.
So this is not a typical rectangle that you would see. And so I'm like, oh, look at that. I found one. So I'm going to look at it. I'm going to feel my butt. I'm going to practice this other thing we call being with. Can you be with the thing that you're seeing for one full inhale and exhale? And what that helps us with is learning how to be with the moment, be with the sensation, be with the person, and take a little bit, grow a little bit of that pause before we get into that autopilot reaction that we're so used to create some space for intentional choice. So that's why we practice that moment of being with. And then the invitation is to turn to a different space, different area of your space, and find another rectangle, one that you don't often see, one that you don't often pay attention to. And again, once you find it, noticing your body connection, being able to look at the thing, and then being with that for one full breath. And then to get us in the habit of looking behind us, let's look behind us and find another rectangle. Ooh, I got a good one. I've never seen this one before.
What is it?
It's like on the door of my bedroom. There's like, you know, those things, those hooks you hang on the back of your door to like
Yeah.
hang up like clothes. It's like that little tab that hangs over the outside of the door. Like, oh,
Nice.
I have never looked at that thing before.
Or maybe I'm just old, but this is fun.
But like, if you only did this and you brought it into your daily life, I guarantee it changes your life.
Yeah.
Because it's wiring up so many skills, so many neural pathways to be able to be intentional and look for things. Look
Mhm.
for something you don't usually look for. We usually look for what's not good.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's
Mhm.
also issuing ourselves totally doable challenges, which wires up different things as well. I was in a situation a while ago where I was like really triggered and upset, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna look for some rectangles. I was like, rectangles are too easy for this vibe that I'm feeling right now. I'm gonna find Z shapes. And I was out in
Mhm.
nature, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna find Z shapes. And it was
Mhm.
truly the distraction I needed to apply my brain in a simple way so that I can achieve a very simple thing and have whatever endorphins come up from achievement in that moment and
Mhm.
really take the time to settle. And I think it also taps into some kind of creativity, like especially the finding the newness ones.
Mhm.
I've found there's rectangles in the fabric of the little padded pillow thing that my singing bowl is sitting on top of. Never seen
Mhm.
those before. And
Mm.
I've got these jaguar collars from Chichen Itza, not neck collars. They make the jaguar sounds when you blow into them.
Mm.
And they've got little, like, sort of rectangular teeth, but really it's a parallelogram. So I was like, oh, rectangle, nope, parallelogram. And then I get to enjoy the word parallelogram and have,
You are old.
giving myself permission to be like, well, that's not really a rectangle, but I'm going with it.
Well, you mentioned two things that are really important is we give our brain just enough work, right? And you had said, oh, just rectangles, that's too simple. For the amount of activation I have right now, that's not enough brain work for me to take my focus and shift it somewhere else. Right.
Mm.
So you knew you needed a little bit more of a challenge. And I think it's getting to know what kind of a challenge does my brain need in order to shift my focus away from this thing so I have a little bit of reprieve, so my body has a little bit of reprieve. um and then for you to say, like, because it's almost game like, there's endorphins of like, oh, I got one, I found one, and that's a totally different nervous system state than whatever you're worried about or stressed about or having a hard time with. So just giving our nervous systems a little bit of a break and a reprieve from that
Mhm.
previous state. um, I've had something similar. Like, I don't remember what the hard thing was that was going on. I was like, I need to look for something red right now. Like,
Mhm.
like rectangles were too simple. Like when you walk outside, there's rectangles everywhere. I'm like, rectangles are too simple. I need to look for red. And then I think I might have even changed it to I need to look for red circles.
Mhm.
And what I always notice is, sure enough, you find them. They
Yes.
are there. And another time I challenged myself, I was outside and I challenged myself to look for triangles because, again, I knew like I need a little bit more of a challenge. And they were there.
They were there. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's also so
Yeah.
neat. We find what we're looking for too. Like there's all these really subtle things going on there that I think are super beneficial for us, maybe unconsciously, but great. There they are.
Right? Isn't that neat? Like, there's so many, if you look at personal growth, like tips and things to practice within the exercise of feel your butt and look for a triangle, you're growing so many of those skills.
Yeah.
And another one relationally I find really helpful about this is looking for the new and the familiar in a person, right? So if you can look for the new and the familiar in your environment through circles and triangles and whatever, you begin to wire up your ability to look for the newness in the person in front of you.
Mm.
And that brings more novelty and excitement, but that also brings, I think, more compassion, because often what we're seeing in the person in front of us is like the things that bug us and annoy us after a while. right? And their typical patterns. And can you see something beyond that? Can you see
Yeah.
something in addition to that that's going to help you in this moment in your dynamic with them?
Gifts for us all. Yes. Thank you. Anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Just that there's lots of opportunities to practice these simple things in priming the body for peace. Right? We made the body-based toolkit especially to practice things like this. And what I love about it is that with every short practice, we've recorded a video. And I love that we recorded a second video for every practice, which is the why. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why is it helpful? What skills is it helping you build in your life when you practice this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And we've heard from a lot of people that that second video is really helpful for them when they understand why they're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so lots of opportunities to practice with us on the podcast or in priming.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Great. Okay. Theoretically, we'll talk about napping next week.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining us as always. And please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.